is the Board of Supervisors and continue on with Agenda Item 30A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the two proposed ballot questions for the November 2024 general election cycle. Who's going to start us off? Okay, Mr. Martinovich, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. Tonight, we're going to, as indicated, discuss potential of putting two ballot questions on the November 2024 ballot, specifically related to funding local roads and roads in general here in Carson City. I want to start by defining the term local road because we've heard some confusion and gotten some questions about what that means. So there are three types of classified roads in Carson City. There's arterials, there's collectors, and there's local roads. All the roads in Carson City that we own and operate and maintain fall under one of those three categories. 70% of the roads we own and maintain are local roads. The other 30% approximately are collectors and arterials. We use the term local road as the official term as it has meaning when we talk with our partners at NDOT or the Federal Highway Administration. When we talk about federal funding, when we talk about grants, the term local road is an important term and a defined term in those areas. So is collectors, so is arterials. So those are the three areas. So when we talk about local roads, we're talking about those 70% of the roads or so in Carson City that are generally not eligible to receive the majority of federal funds and as such really rely on local funding sources to maintain and preserve them going forward. So I just wanted to provide that background and definition for those out there who had a question. You know, the need to fund road projects and road maintenance construction is not a new one. And it's been in doing research, this effort has been going more than 40 years here in Carson City through various initiatives. And the Board of Supervisors, you all have taken actions not only in the past, but more recently with the allocation of $2.5 million of ARPA funding, other general fund transfers over the years, and the reallocation and adjustments to various plans of expenditure to increase funding for road-related projects. But the issue is that our construction costs have outpaced our revenue sources. And our primary revenue source for roads, as you all know, is fuel taxes, gasoline and diesel. And gasoline taxes in particular haven't changed in Carson City since the late 90s, and even before that at the federal and the state level. And up until recently, we haven't had a tax on diesel until our most recent ballot measure back in 2022. And prior to that, Carson City didn't tax diesel in any way. So there's been various efforts over the years to increase funding in this area. So fuel taxes isn't a sustainable funding source anymore. And so we're here looking at various ways to fund roads in the long term. So in 2021, the Board of Supervisors kicked off a campaign, asked staff to kick off a campaign looking at outreach and education to provide an understanding of what other sources are out there, what can we do for local roads. And we've been tasked with evaluating multiple options for roads and transportation-related infrastructure with a focus on local roads. As I mentioned, they don't have other primary funding sources. They have to be funded with our local dollars. Various past RTC and Board of Supervisor presentations for background and information on that. So as we know, the issue is that if we continue down our current revenue path, our roads are going to continue to deteriorate. And this is our pie chart we've been using for projected road condition in 2050, using our pavement asset management software, where over 71% of the roads are very poor or worse in the city. These are all roads, worse for local roads. And when we think about how do we go about this initiative, how do we step through the process, what are we trying to do, we were tasked with various items and takeaways from past meetings. The public outreach is important. We've been doing that public outreach through our website and our public meetings. The focus should be on local roads. We've heard that from you all, we've heard that from the RTC, and we've heard that from the locals that we've talked with, the people who have come to our meetings. We should avoid options that require new state legislation. Creating state laws takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of coordination with a lot of folks to make those happen. So mechanisms that require new state laws, such as fees on electric vehicles or similar things would take time and really is a statewide effort and not something we, Carson City, can do on a local level. We should be looking for multiple mechanisms that reach a broad range of transportation users. Try not to limit it to one group of users, but reach across the city for all those different types of users. And we want to be able to explain and show how the money is being spent with a focus on roads pavement and pavement-related improvements. We've heard that loud and clear as well. So tonight, we're here to talk about two options. We have been looking at a total of 5 options in super detailed analysis, but we're here to talk about 2 options tonight, the special purpose sales tax and the supplemental government services tax. So stepping through each of those briefly here, this first is the special purpose sales tax. This is authorized under NRS 377A and authorizes the board to enact a sales tax for the purposes of construction, maintenance, and repair of roads, or a combination of the purposes listed there. The tax would be a new sales tax of 0.25% or 0.25% on the sale of goods and services that occur here in Carson City. The RTC at their March meeting recommended to the board that the funding generated from this sales tax be used only for the construction, maintenance, and repair of local roads. And I underlined and bolded that. That was the direction we received from the RTC, again, local roads. I want to take a moment to discuss the term construction, maintenance, and repair. So those are terms as together are defined under NRS and 377A. I don't know the specific definition off the top of my head. I will tell you that staff's interpretation of those are construction means reconstruction. We're going to take our road, we're going to reconstruct it to a new condition. Maintenance, preservation means preservation. We're going to rehabilitate, we're going to preserve that over the long term. And repair means go out there and fix potholes and crack seal and do those basic repair items. So we've gotten some questions about, well, are you going to be building new roads? And for our purposes, staff's purposes, we're not using the term construction as we're going to go out and build new roads. If there's different direction there, please let me know. But we consider the term construction as reconstruction, remove and replace what's there. Lastly, on this slide, that funds enacted under this NRS for the sales tax must be deposited in a separate fund and may be administered by the Regional Transportation Commission. In terms of how much revenue the special purpose sales tax could generate, we have a history of what other 0.25% sales tax generate in Carson City, and therefore we estimate that it'll generate around $4 to $4.5 million per year for road projects. Moving on to the supplemental government services tax. This was a mechanism that was originally discussed and sort of eliminated or put on the side as at that time we were unsure of the revenue potential. We thought it was generally less than $1 million, maybe only in the order of 500,000. But through additional research and analysis, we brought this one back to life as it has the potential of generating, around $2.5 million. So what it is specifically authorized under NRS 371. We would impose if passed, it would impose a government services tax of not more than 1 cent of $1 or 1% per dollar of a vehicle up to 35% of that vehicle. And I have a calculation sheet on the next slide for vehicles registered here in Carson City. It would apply at the DMV upon DMV registrations, and it depreciates as the vehicle gets older. The vehicle gets older, the amount of government services tax collected decreases. Government service tax can be used for construction maintenance of sidewalks, streets, avenues, and other items listed there on the screen. Indicated that the revenue amount is around 2.5. And similar to the sales tax, the RTC recommended that this revenue generated under this also be used only for construction, maintenance, and repair of local roads. So very similar. Funds enacted under this NRS for the supplemental government services tax can also be administered by the RTC. So here's the calculation version for information here. The equation, generally speaking, is car valuation times 35% of that car valuation as defined by the NRS, times a depreciation rate as defined by the NRS, and then the 1 penny supplemental government services tax. And so you can see the calculation there for a car valued at $50,000. Year one, you would be paying around $175 per year.
Yeah,
and at year
pass.
and at year
Yeah.
and at year 9, which is the full depreciation, at year 9 and beyond, you'd be paying $26.25 per year. So in summary of the funding options, sales tax is estimated to generate 4 to 4.5 million a year. Supplemental government services tax, 2.5 million per year. And each of these would be accounted for through a newly created fund solely for the construction, maintenance, and repair of local roads as recommended by the RTC. The fund could also be administered and would recommend that it be administered by the RTC similar to other road funds, and cost allocation methods for the fund would be applied similar to other cost allocations and funds that have been approved in the past by voters here in Carson City. Of course, that's the revenue side. What do we do about project delivery? And so it's important to understand that as well. And so staff are developing possible implementation and prioritization methods for how do we deliver projects if the additional revenue is received. And in general, we're going to follow the process as outlined in our pavement management plan, but it needs some adjustment. Our pavement management plan is really focused on delivering projects for collectors and arterials. So we're analyzing and we're trying to understand, well, what are the differences? How do we apply this here? But generally, they're going to be probably consistent in those delivery methods. So we're working on that in the background and plan to present that June 12th at the RTC for that methodology and then an initial round of projects for prioritization. So that's where we are on the delivery side. And so tonight, summary of actions, approval of to place the ballot questions on the ballot, those two, the sales tax and the supplemental government services tax, discussion and review of the ballot question language themselves, and then under a separate item, discussion for appointing for and against passage of those items. So that concludes my presentation, and happy to take questions. Thank you.
Does any member have a question? You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start.
Supervisor Giomi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start for discussion. On the governmental services tax, the language, and I'm referring to either comments I've gotten or some of the public comments we've received. The language says shall be administered by RTC, and on the sales tax, it really doesn't say that. So, tell me the difference. Why is it on one, not on the other? Why is it may, not shall, in the language?
Well, under NRS 377 for the sales tax option, the language is may be administered by the RTC. I don't believe, and our DA can correct me, that there is any such language in NRS for the supplemental government services tax referring to the RTC. So,
Yes.
so the language that we put in that was drafted for the ballot question and has been discussed, and if I misspoke, was it's a may. There's not a shall. It doesn't
I
must
misspoke.
be.
It says may,
Okay.
but some of the comments I got, why doesn't it say shall?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, I misstated it. I stated it the wrong way, so sorry. But so the language comes from NRS is what you're saying.
The may for sales tax come from NRS, and I think government services tax is silent on the administration.
Okay.
But
Yes, so-
couldn't we, in the ballot, indicate that we're going to direct it to RTC? I think that's the point we're
Right.
asking,
Sure.
right?
So, yeah, Adam Tully, Deputy District Attorney. The statutes, yeah, I don't remember seeing anything about a regional transportation commission on the government or
Right.
on the supplemental services tax. It definitely says may in the supplemental, in the special use sales tax. So may means you can, but you don't have to. And you could, just as we're limiting the scope of what the money can be spent on
Right.
through the ballot question, right? Both of these statutes allow us to collect this money and spend it on a wider array of things than we're proposing. So in the same way that we can reduce the scope in terms of what we're spending revenue on, we can also elect to have RTC administer it or have RTC not administer it. It's we can put it in the ordinance, we can put it in our interlocal agreement with the RTC. We could probably skin it a couple different ways.
Well, can we put it in the ballot question?
We want to put it in
This
the
is
ballot.
most
Sure,
important.
yeah, if that's the pleasure, yeah, I'm sure we could change the ballot language as well, but ultimately it'd end up in the ordinance.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, the ordinance is a driving factor, but I understand, and I think you can appreciate the ballot question is what our citizens are seeing now.
Sure.
Right, the ordinance comes later, so I'd rather be as upfront and direct as where we're going to spend the money now so that we don't have to sort of kick the can down the road and say, yeah, we'll deal with that later because it creates distrust, and I don't think we want to do that. So I am for the shall component. The other comment I have heard is, you know, and I know that's not what the intent of this is that, you know, new roads should be paid for by the people who are developing the land or doing that, and this shouldn't be used for new roads. I don't think any of us disagree with that, but it really doesn't say that anywhere. So is there a way for us to do that in the ballot question that ensures that's the action, or is it sufficient to put it on the record so we have a legislative intent? So I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, it's I guess it's the same concept, which is we've got enabling legislation that allows us to do a relatively broad array of things, and we can limit ourselves through the ballot question and ordinance, if that's the board's pleasure. I'm not sure, like phrasing it might be a bit tricky, but doable. Probably doable, but it'd be a little, it'd take me a bit.
Seems like you could just substitute the word reconstruction for construction. Then there's no question in anybody's mind, 50 years from now, exactly what the intent was.
To fix existing roads,
Yeah.
not make new roads.
Maybe ponder that a bit.
Maybe it's not so hard.
So reconstruction brings it to new status
Yeah.
or to good or very good on one of your charts I would like, but I think that's our intent, right?
Well, I think there's going to be a variety of actions we take in terms of improving roads, right? I mean, I
Right.
think some roads may need to be brought all the way up to the good level, and
Right,
we may
right.
not be able to afford that. Some may go from poor to fair, or fair to, oh, I forget what all the categories are, but I don't think any of us here think that we're going to get from reconstruct to good on every single road. But I would like to see those two things, shall and reconstruction, because I think it clearly reflects what this board wants, and it unequivocally shows our community what our intention is, with the understanding that the ordinance will further define it, but they're not going to be voting on an ordinance, they're voting on the ballot question. I think that's it. I feel comfortable with the definition of local roads based on the way you define it. I think, I think we're covered there. The other thing I like about these two ballot questions is that this spreads this pain among a broad group of people and doesn't focus it on any one group. As an example, this now will hit the electric vehicle people when they're right now not paying anything, really. If you're fully electric, you're really not paying anything towards our roads. So this gets that, and it gets those residents and employees who live outside the city and come into the city to work, because they'll be using the sales tax and driving on a road. So I like those two aspects of it. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Is anybody else? Supervisor Schutte?
I have a question before I comment. Initially, it was Darren Schultz was listed as staff contact, and since Chris spoke, do I need to read a disclosure? I have one that I can.
Erring on the side of caution,
You
that would
just
probably
read
be
it.
appropriate.
Then I will do that. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My nephew is Chris Martinovich, who is employed by Carson City and is presenting this item. Chris and I are not receiving compensation of any kind directly related to this item. It will not foreseeably impair or enhance the terms of his service with the city, and we are not affected by the outcome of this item to a greater degree than any other resident of Carson City. NRS 281A.420 only requires abstention in clear cases, and the independent judgment of a reasonable person in my position would not be impacted by my familial relationship. Therefore, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter. So,
Thank you for your disclosure. Do you have some comments you'd like to share?
so yes, I actually what Supervisor Giomi brought up is what I was going to bring up as well. I think it's critically important that this funding, in the event or when it goes to the ballot, that it's earmarked specifically for local roads, and I appreciate the explanation of that again, because I know even at RTC that there's some confusion. There was a conversation about neighborhood roads versus local roads, and so thank you for the clarification that that is local roads. I also agree that in terms of the will versus shall, that was concerning for some people, because that leaves that opening for, if it's not RTC, then who would be overseeing the funding? So I appreciate that clarification, and I just wanted to get that on the record.
Okay. Supervisor White or Horton have anything? Pretty much we've, oh, you do.
I do.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, sorry.
No.
Supervisor White.
Hold on.
Uh-oh, he says, I'll let
New
him take a
York.
drink of water and,
New York is getting to me.
yep, I was gonna say, yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Chris, just a minute ago, you said 70% of our roads in Carson City are local. But in this report from August 22, it tells us 66%. So where does the 70% come from?
It was just a number, a rounding number. There's also the center line miles and there's also square footage. That report that you're referencing is based on square footage, whereas we look at center line miles, it's closer to 70.
Okay.
It was a number used for illustrative purposes. It's around 70.
So if we look at page 1485, it tells us there in the second paragraph, it talks about transportation-related activities. So it says staff has been analyzing several funding sources to improve the condition of Carson City's roadway pavement and fund transportation-related activities. Can you tell us what are transportation-related activities?
Well, I don't have the packet page in front of me, so I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but in general terms, transportation-related activities means things like reconstruction of roads, fixing of sidewalks, upgrading of curb gutter and sidewalk, signing and striping, snow removal, crack sealing, pothole, anything that has to do with activities on our roadways.
We're gonna have to get Chris a packet so he can follow along here. All my questions are based off the page numbers in the packet. I don't know why staff's here not prepared. Can we get Chris a packet, please?
Thanks, Denny. We could pull it up online.
Yeah, this is the reason I don't have a packet. Which packet page were you referring to, Supervisor White?
1485. It's way in the back, Chris.
It was a long day, Chris.
Okay, staff report, 1485.
In the second paragraph, the very first sentence. Analyzing funding sources to improve Carson City's roadway pavement and fund transportation-related activities.
I think that language, that my answer, I stand by that answer I gave a moment ago.
Okay. On on page 1486, down at the third paragraph in the last line there, it talks about Carson City may also issue bonds against the government services tax. I haven't heard staff comment on that. First I knew of it is when I read that particular code. So where are we at on that? What's the, we talk about issuing bonds off of this money?
The NRS allows us to issue bonds. We haven't discussed issuing bonds specific for any set or group of projects under either of these options.
Okay. On page 1494. In the fourth paragraph, it says that we would be authorized to do curb, gutter, and sidewalk work. I've been clear from the beginning that I'm not interested in this tax funding those activities. I'm interested in fixing the asphalt. As I've said before, things that are eligible to get money to be worked on outside of this tax is all that I will support. So I'm not sure how we get to having these two ballot questions be very clear that we're working on asphalt only, but somehow we need to craft these questions so that that's all we're working on. And I get the whole dig once, you know, when we do go in and reconstruct or fix a road, we may have curbs and gutters that need to go along with that, but we cobble together different funding sources all the time for different projects. And so somehow we need to, while we're going through this today, get in your heads how you're going to craft that, recraft that language so that that's all we do is pavement. That's all I'm interested in. NRS 377A.020 subsection A1 says that we must contract with the department for the administration or operation of the tax in Carson City. Do you have any idea what that's all about? So what I just referenced sends us over to 377A.030. So we need to kind of understand what we're talking about there.
Sure, yeah, Adam Tully, Deputy District Attorney for the record. My understanding of it is where we have to contract with the Department of Taxation for them because they collect the tax and redistribute it. And I believe we already have something like that in place, and we may or may not need to amend that agreement based on on how this all goes. But I haven't actually looked at the contract or done anything specific on the contract.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Would you mind?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's nothing new. I mean, we're already doing that for the taxes we get from them, correct?
My
I
understanding,
mean,
yes.
okay,
They charge you a little
right,
admin fee
right.
for,
And it's a percentage of,
they
you know,
take a little off the
but-
top.
but it's set in statute, right?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And then on page 1496, the same idea there at the very top of the page, the actual ballot question, taking out the word constructing and inserting reconstruction or reconstructing. In the explanation, NRS 371.050 subsection 5A2 says that we would be allowed to spend these tax monies within 1 mile outside of Carson City. And at subsection 5.A, 3, it says that we would be allowed to spend these tax monies 30 miles outside of Carson City. I think we need some language that's pretty clear. We're not spending this money outside of Carson City. I know that's our intent. But again, in 50 years from now, when we're not here and nobody takes the initiative to watch this video, it needs to be clear, we're not spending this money outside Carson City.
It already says that. Says, yeah, is approved, the Carson City Board would enact an only allowing the supplemental service to be used for, and we're gonna change that to reconstruction, but maintenance and local in Carson City. So we already state it will only be spent in Carson City.
Yeah, and I bring this up because that's exactly the way 371 is constructed. It says you can spend it in your community and then later it gives you an exemption.
But we're saying in here we won't, because the ordinance will
Okay.
say it can only be Carson City. I
As long
agree
as
with you.
it's-
Mhm.
As long as it's clear, we're not spending this money outside Carson City.
We're not.
Okay. NRS 371.05045, subsection 1A, talks about a number of vehicles that are exempt to this general services tax. And that would be vehicles that are specifically exempt, like your government vehicles. But in 1B, vehicles that would be exempted from this tax are those that are engaged in interstate or inter-county operations. So, do we know how many of the 74,000 vehicles registered in Carson City are engaged in interstate or inter-county operations? Because that could be a big determination on what's the actual dollars we're gonna collect.
Those are IFTA or IRP. They have a different license plate because
Right.
they're inter, so they're
Ordinarily-
IFTA or IRP, and they don't count as like a Carson City-based vehicle because they're an inter-county or interstate traffic, so they.
Apportioned license plates,
Yes,
okay?
yes, they're
So-
apportioned license plates, so they don't, we get a little
So those-
bit, but
So those
they're not
vehicles,
us.
those vehicles are not included in the 74,000 vehicles that are
Right.
referenced in
They're
here.
not Carson City-based. They're interstate vehicles, right?
And again, in paragraph 3, on page 1496, it talks about being allowed to do curb, gutter, and sidewalk work. Again, what I said earlier, I'm not interested in that. We have to figure out how we're going to craft this question that disallows all of these other activities. That's all I have for now.
Thanks. Well, I think we're all in favor, support, unless I missed something of the reconstruction, limiting it so no one can misunderstand that we're gonna go make a new road and add to our problems, right? So we're not gonna do that. I think we have to have an honest discussion about whether or not the curb and the gutter that's attached to the roadway is an eligible expense. So I think we have to have that as a discussion here.
According to the
Yes.
statutes, it is eligible.
No, I get that.
We wanna constrict this.
You want to constrict this. I said we need to have a discussion. The RTC recommended that if we're doing a road, we cut out painting and signs, so snow removal. We took all those other ancillary activities that you're talking about out. But yeah, the sweeping, all of that, we agree is out. But I really want to understand that the curb and the gutter and the sidewalk that's attached to the asphalt, if I'm there and I'm fixing something, I want to fix it. And so I think that's really what the RTC had to say. And I think it would be difficult to explain to the public that I just left your crumbling sidewalk there because I only fixed the asphalt, but I just let everything else crumble. So and we don't have money now in the, to do the sidewalks in neighborhoods either.
And-
So I'm saying, I don't know that I want to remove curb, gutter, and sidewalk. I think we need a broader discussion.
I-
Su-
If this tax is imposed, it doesn't give us enough revenue to do the job 100% to begin with. So we need to take out the extras and concentrate on what the community is complaining about. And I know there are other people out there complaining about sidewalks. I've done that. But this whole entire conversation started with, let's fix the roads. So let's keep it on asphalt, is my opinion.
Supervisor Horton.
I understand the desire to pave only asphalt, and I, to some degree, I feel the same way, but I happen to know through my experience that it's really not practical to do that. There are areas that you're going to work in that are gonna need curb and gutter repairs and sidewalk repairs and ramps that are required. It doesn't mean that you're gonna go down the street and replace every inch of concrete on that street. You're gonna replace what's required within the project to maintain your drainage or federal requirements for ADA. That's what you're gonna do. We leave sections of existing curb, gutter, and sidewalk in place all the time. Darren can address that as well. It's not unusual to go through there and hunt and peck for the bad spots and fix them. That's kind of standard. But you can't just completely ignore it. You have to have room in there so that you can repair those sections that need to be repaired.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we
Supervisor-
I'm not saying we completely ignore it. I'm saying we can get money for those projects in other places.
In some instances, you might be able to draw on another account, but in other ones, you're not going to be able to do it. So I wouldn't want to see the project halted or hampered because that funding wasn't available from another account.
Supervisor Giomi.
I think in the interest of transparency and clarity, that language has to stay in. I don't see how you fix local roads that abut crumbling concrete and leave the crumbling concrete. I don't see how you do it. And if we're going to do that, I think we should be upfront about saying that's what we're going to do. I agree that we've stripped out the elements that are not germane to fixing roads. To me, fixing the sidewalk that touches and connects the road, that cars park up against, that vehicles use as a way to not drive into somebody's yard is part of the road, in my mind. And I don't think it makes sense to take those elements out. I think it does make sense to take out all the other stuff we talked about, the signage, the street sweeping, the snow removal. That's not, to me, that is completely superfluous related to this. But to me, that has to stay in. It doesn't make sense to me to take it out.
Instead of associated, maybe we say required and base that on the requirements of the project in order to maintain drainage and continuity through pedestrian traffic or whatever the case may be. But maybe it's required by the project rather than just associated with it
I can live with required.
as determined by the director or something.
I can live with required. Because I think Supervisor Schutte, you had comments?
Actually, I was just saying that I like that suggestion. And I mean, it does put that emphasis on the roadway and on the pavement, but it also leaves it open for those projects to do it correctly. You don't want somebody, well,
Okay. Any other? Okay, I don't see any other.
I need to make a comment here.
Certainly.
Madam Mayor, is that this doesn't define the word striping, but many of our local roads do have stop bars, crosswalks, longitudinal striping. We need to be able to repaint those when the pavement's removed and replaced, or we do preservation, or we do crack sealing. I don't know if you all want to define that term, but that is a road-related function, to your point, Supervisor Giomi, of tasks that need to be replaced, and those are relatively small costs, but finding another fund for doing that would be difficult for those. But so I would ask that striping, if we're going to go into defining terms, striping be included as part of that discussion.
Let's think about, so we have striping in Fund 256. So let me just ask in a general question, do we not replace striping in those areas because they fade and things anyway?
But if
I'm
we
just
do, but if the
walking through
road's
it.
removed and replaced, then we restripe one as part of that project. That's common practice. And then they
But
get
you're saying you couldn't find the striping dollars out of 256 because you would, I'm
We're-
just
we're not-
trying to.
We're not budgeting reconstruction of striping out of 256, so
Mhm.
we would have to use another fund, yeah, 256 or 250.
Or 250, where we do striping.
I don't know how you reconstruct a road and don't
Yeah.
put a stop bar or a center line.
It's part of the project
It
itself.
has to be.
The same way
For
that
me, it
design and
has to
traffic
be.
control and all of those elements are part of it as well.
To me, yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know how you could leave that off. It would not be a safe street. And you wouldn't be in compliance with, there's got to be some instances where those things are required, right? I mean, stop bars are required, are
There
they
are
not?
many.
Huh? Yeah, I mean, that has to be part of it. It's the ancillary stuff like sweeping and snow removal and things like that I think, we're clear that are not going to be paid for out of this fund.
Okay,
For
thank
me.
you.
Word required, does that not fit the definition? So it's required to be there?
Required works, I just
I
wanted
just
to
want to
make,
make sure we're
I was just
all,
wanting to
again,
sure we're
on the
not,
same page here.
if we're
It's a
defining
requirement
terms, I wanna
element.
make
I
sure
Okay.
we're
think you
not.
just mentioned it because you mentioned striping
Oh,
as being excluded.
mhm. We
And
did.
you just
when
wanted on the
RTC.
record that it will be included.
You're not going to
If we
find a
agree.
whole lot of striping and
No.
painting on local
Local
roads. It's going to
roads.
be very minimal.
Right.
But those stop bars, for example, things like that are required in the MUTCD, which we've adopted, and we have to do it.
Well, I think the purpose was we meant you're not going to use it to go do fading striping because that's already budgeted, our fading striping. So if you're doing a repair and replacement and it's part of the project, then it's a required element, but you're not going to use it to go just issue a short line or a long line striping contract. I think that's what
That's
we were
correct.
saying at RTC. That's already funded and we're not going to do a replacement. That's all, right? So if you're reconstructing a road and you're taking the striping away, you have to bring it back when you fix the road. So I think that's a required repair or replacement.
And that's good to have on the record.
Yeah, it's good to have it on the record. Anything else you have, Supervisor Giomi, or?
No, ma'am.
That was yours?
Thank you.
Supervisor Horton, did you have any more, or okay. I don't see any more, so why don't we go ahead and take some public comment on these items? Did I have anyone signed up? No? Did I? Oh, come on up, Mr. Horn. Mhm.
Oh, thank you very much. Bill Horn, taxpayer. I very much appreciate the fact that you have addressed limiting the tax so that it is just the roads. Because although I think you're doing the right thing as far as doing the taxes, I would be against it if it were not limited. The second thing I'm going to say is I think that having two ballot things to spread the pain is a mistake. I think that it should be sales tax, period, one source, one problem, not multiple sources, not multiple agencies being involved in collecting it. I think you ought to take the money that you believe that is necessary and make it a sales tax, and let's have one shot, not one shot in a pill or this or that, and try to segment the thing across and try and figure out how you handle different agencies collecting the tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do I have any other public comment? I didn't see any. Nope. Go ahead, Ronnie. More public comment? Oh, boy. It looks painful. I know.
sorry, thank you. Good evening, Ronnie Hanneman, Carson City Chamber of Commerce. It was brought to my attention that putting up the 1/4% sales tax will really inhibit one of our major tax generators for the city, and that would,
Talk to him today. Okay,
No?
go ahead. Nope, not a problem. Let's go ahead, go ahead.
well, if you know better already, Lori.
I will be happy. They did contact me this morning, and probably that's exactly what you're on, but we showed them what the actual rates were, and so they were fine. They
Well-
thought it was gonna be greater or equal to the Washoe County sales tax rate, which would mean they would have to change all their advertising, all of their things. Okay, the car dealers. I was trying to leave them out of the discussion,
Well,
but.
no, they were very concerned
Right,
about
they
this.
were. And so when they realized that we were not going to match the Washoe County rate, then their concern was alleviated.
Okay.
But
Well, then
thank you.
forget that I'm here.
Well, they're going to appreciate you were out there to help them, though. That's right. That's exactly right. Okay. So do I have anybody else? Mr. Vitale? Good evening.
John Vitale, Carson City, live out on the west side, and listening to what the discussion was today, everything you're saying, especially I agree with the concept of keeping this very tightly bound to Carson City, nothing over the city line. I think you're doing the right thing. I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Do anybody else? Okay, I don't see any other public comment. You want to bring it back up here? Supervisor Giomi, a motion?
I'll give it a shot.
You're ready?
See if we can get there. I move to approve the sales tax and government service tax ballot questions for the November 2024 Carson City general election, and to approve the language for the ballot questions with the following changes. Replacing the comment where it says may be administered by the RTC to shall be administered by the RTC, changing reference to construction, from construction to reconstruction, and changing the comment where it talks about maintenance repair of local roads in Carson City along with any associated repair and replacement, replacing the word associated with required. And the remaining is presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor,
Pardon me,
please.
Mayor, just really,
Sorry,
if I
did you
could
need
also
any
be
other
able,
clarification?
just in the event, just the ability to make other conforming changes.
Oh, and
Sorry,
conforming,
I
yes.
will add,
Yes,
with the allowance to allow the district attorney's office to make other conforming changes as may be required. Will the second agree?
It will, but can you just again explain for the record what you mean by that?
Sure. So if after I make the changes specified, I come across some paragraph that we haven't discussed that now conflicts based on the changes we've made, I want to make changes to the existing portion that conflicts so that it conforms to the new language.
Which doesn't change the intent or
Correct.
meaning of the changes
Correct.
approved.
Correct, yeah. It's carrying the intent throughout.
Thank you. That was where I was going. Yes, my second still holds.
okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Thank you all. I know it's a lot of work. Adam, go and conform. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 31A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the apportionment. We're going to apportion y'all out there now. Appointment, I know that kind of came out wrong, didn't it? The appointment of members to the committees to prepare arguments advocating and opposing the two ballot questions for the November 5th, 2024 general election ballot. Mr. Hohen, are you gonna
Sure.
take us through this item, please? Thank you.
So this project started back in March, and we've complied with NRS 295.121 by advertising the search for committee members, and we did that on Saturday, March 16th. And at that time, the questions were very, I guess, vague or general. And we put it out there with an application deadline, and we had candidates respond to that. And tried diligently going to all the community meetings to get as many people as I could to participate on these committees. And thank you to the people that have stepped up. I appreciate it greatly. Once you submit or once you approve the committee members, they're going to have their meetings, and they're going to have until May 23rd, which is a deadline for them to create their arguments. Their arguments are going to be not to exceed 400 words. Once those arguments are given back to the clerk, then I'm going to exchange those to the either party so they can write rebuttals. Then my ADA, Ben Johnson, and I will review that language so we can prepare that language to match up with the question and explanations you just approved today. And the people that have stepped up are in your packet. And it's a challenge for some because some would say yes and some would say no, but now that you've got a little bit more finality to it, I think they'll be more clear in their responses.
Okay, let me try something a little bit here because there was comments within the applications or the documents that said I could be a pro or I can be a con based on what happens and what limiting things. So maybe what would be a good start for us is I'm just going to ask the question, and if you're here tonight, you could have the opportunity to make sure you're still where you think you want to be before we do any final appointment so that we try and get this right. So Chaz is here, I see. And you would like to be a yes side for the sales tax. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you would like to stay that way? Okay.
Yes.
I just thought, well, I think it's an easier that we just make sure where everyone is at. What else?
Mayor,
Oh, did you have a question? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
while he's here.
Oh, sorry.
I
He's
mean,
got a question.
I guess from my perspective, if we're going to have people writing ballot questions, I'd like to hear that it's like, yeah, I'm for it, or no, I'm against it. You know, I mean, I really,
Okay.
in my mind, if we're going to
do
put
that.
people on these committees, I would like conviction of whatever side you're on. I mean, I think we owe it to our community to present those ballot questions in a way that the people who are arguing for and against are passionate about the position they have, as opposed to just being, yeah, you know, I'm okay. So that I'd like to hear if you're passionate about that.
Supervisor Giomi, as you probably know, I served 5 years on the RTC, and I understand the issue quite well. And I understand we need to raise all the money we can, and I am passionate about advocating for this.
But I appreciate hearing it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. How about anybody that's requesting? You guys can just come up if you wanted to be on and tell us which side or which thing. Oh, yeah. I will. I'll come backwards to that in a minute. Hello, how are you?
Glenn Conant. I would be for it. I was waiting for this.
Did you want to do sales tax and government service?
Yes.
Just both? You're in favor of both?
I would be in favor of both of those fundings. There are other options that were considered I would not be okay with, but these two, I would be okay with it. I'm not, paying more taxes.
No, I get it.
But,
None of us are.
but the roads have to be fixed.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And so, based off of the discussion tonight and what you all came up with, that's what I was waiting for. I wanted to see the wording
Yep.
because I agree. I don't think the average person out there cares if you fix their road and fix a little section of their sidewalk?
Right.
Right.
I don't think so. Okay, if you're doing major sidewalk construction, that's a different story. But I think we need the roads fixed, and I think those two, sales tax, if there's a fair tax, that's it. And the other one, the 1%, if you have a more expensive vehicle, you're gonna pay more. If you have an electric vehicle, they're all expensive. Okay, and so you're gonna pay more if you have, your income may not be as great and you have a vehicle that's much older, you're gonna pay less. So I think that's a way, and the statute's there already for that purpose. There are already other counties that do this for that purpose. So I would be for it for those two measures,
Okay,
and yeah.
Thank you very much.
okay. Let's see, I don't see Dan Mooney. I don't see Dan, and I don't see Brew. Because Brew said, depending on the, well, see, I don't think I see Roger. Did I see Roger? Nope. Bob? Okay, well, we know for sure. Maybe I'll go back to Chaz, because maybe that's part of our thing. Are you in favor of both of the taxes? That you would be willing to do the government service tax and the sales tax and work with Glenn?
Yeah, I am in favor of both of them.
Both, okay. So. We're going with that.
Hey, man, come
How
on.
many people do we look for to write on the side of the pro and con?
You're looking for three, but
You're
we
looking
can
for
live, but we
three.
can live with one.
And we can live with one, so two's in the middle? Oh,
Who's in the middle?
Okay, so we have Chaz, and Glenn for the pro sides.
On both.
My previous discussions with Bob Barchi, based on all the restrictions you talked about, he'd be on the favor side.
On the yes side, right?
Dan Mooney would be on the opposed side for sure. And I think Mr. Brewster would be on the
And
opposed.
Kirkland, right? Roger's a no.
Yeah.
Well,
So for those folks that aren't in the room, can we just appoint them at large for now and let them sort that out between them and Scott?
I'm not comfortable doing that.
I don't know.
Can I ask a question? I mean,
Yes,
my
absolutely.
concern with Roger is that, and this is the other side of what I asked both Glenn and Chaz. In his application, Roger said the word may should be replaced by shall, which we did. If we do that, then he can support it. So I don't know how we can put him on the
Right.
no side if he's not no. You know what I mean? So
Dan is a no.
I don't
Dan's a no.
I don't feel like Roger can be considered for the no.
Because we corrected what he
He said in his letter, in his application, if we change the wording, which we did, he would support it. So we can't really put him on the no if he's going to support something. So I think, we'll have to just have the DA's office do that one, much to their chagrin.
with Dan Mooney.
Yeah.
Because he's a
'Cause he would
definite
do
no.
both. Yeah.
Did he say both? Okay. Oh, well, then we can
No.
do Dan on both.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have at least one, right?
And Mr. Brewster, do you know, did anyone talk to him?
I did.
Would he do both?
He most likely would do both.
On the no? I thought he was also, if we changed things, I thought he said he,
I didn't get that impression from Mr. Brewster. I talked to him.
Well, his app didn't, I don't think his said anything.
It was more an email.
Hold on, let me.
wait, let's read what his said, because we want to honor. He has them on speed dial. No. Sorry. I want to do the right thing. I think that's what we're all interested in.
He's probably watching us as we speak.
I know.
Yeah, he didn't. really
Position
say.
either for or against, depending on the final text.
And I don't
That-
think I would.
So that bothers me.
I don't think I could put him on either based on that personally.
Yeah, I would just leave Dan. I know Dan's a no on both.
Right, right. So we have Charles I know I got to call you Chaz, but technically I'm going to call you Charles for this. So we have Charles McQuarrie, Glenn Connett, and Bob Bartsey for the yeses on both, and then Dan Mooney for the opposition side on both. Is that where everybody's seen it?
Second.
Okay, that was a motion. Wait,
No, probably.
But Bob,
any further public comment
Public
before we
comments,
do
yeah.
a final one? We took public comment, but just in case there's anybody else, let me technically, and then that will be
You can
my
redo it
motion
if you want.
or whatever. Hello, hi Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I have to say that I wouldn't want to make a statement I was for or against something until I actually saw the final wording.
It's
And
here. You saw it.
But you said there was some fine tuning, and fine tuning can be a paragraph with a punctuation mark or whatever could change the whole focus or the whole direction of one sentence. So I like the fact that these individuals have stepped up. I wouldn't have had the nerve, and I appreciate their getting up here and putting themselves to this. But I actually feel like, well, if you only get one voted for, either the sales tax or the vehicle registration type situation, you're not going to have enough money. And then unless you raise the sales tax to compensate for the fact that you didn't get them both voted for. So if you had one voted against and one voted for, since they're divided in their vote, you don't vote one and get both. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You
They're
have to vote
independent
yes
ballot
for
measures.
both. Right. And I'm thinking we're setting ourselves up to fail, which would leave you all with the determination for us. And if you put them both in and say, listen, we got to do both. We're going to have to add sales tax and we're going to have to do vehicle in one. And if that didn't pass, well, shame on us. That meant that we weren't eager to take care of the payments. We weren't going to take that on, and we're leaving that responsibility to you. So I'm uncomfortable with this. But I'm
Denny,
not.
this is to appoint the people, not to discuss the ballot measure. This is to appoint the people to write the pro and cons.
Right,
Just
and
like-
that's why this is so important, to make sure that they're understanding the whole thing. Pros and cons on this are very delicate, and they've got to be written considerably. Thank you.
Mhm, thank you. Okay, do I have anybody else, just in case? Okay, then I will move.
or
You want me to do
Mayor,
it?
I have a quick.
Oh,
or-
question, I'm sorry, Lisa.
No, that's okay.
Supervisor
So,
Schutte?
Bob, he said favor for question one, the sales tax. He wasn't listed on the other, and so I'm not
Okay,
comfortable with. I'd be okay with if we knew for sure, but I'm not comfortable with having him there without actually having that. So thanks.
okay. Go ahead.
All right, I'll
Supervisor
take a
Schutte.
shot again. I'm going to butcher his name, so I apologize. I move to appoint Bob Bartsey, if that's correct.
That's
Excellent. Charles McGuire and
McQuarrie.
McQuarrie, sorry. Sorry. And I'm reading ahead. And Glenn Conant to the committee to prepare arguments advocating for approval of the sales tax ballot question. I move to appoint Dan Mooney to the committee to prepare arguments advocating in opposition to the sales tax ballot question. I move to appoint Glenn Conant and Charles McQuarrie to the committee to prepare arguments advocating for approval of the GST ballot question. And I move to appoint Dan Mooney to the committee to prepare arguments advocating in opposition to the GST ballot question.
For a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Okay, this one done. Back over to this side. All right, we are now on to agenda item 32, which is final public comment for the Board of Supervisors. Do I have any final public comment? Mr. French.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to put some kudos out to the Carson City Subconservance District, they had a cover art deal for 5 to 10-year-olds. And Mr., if I get it right, Mia Coda Hicks, for the 5 to 10-year-olds. Their contribution is, I think, really fantastic, and what it says is planet versus plastic, and they're right along my deal here. And also to remind people that there's a Get on the Bus, and it'll be coming up in soon. So get registered if you can. I know it's a bit of an expense, but it's very worthwhile to me to have a better sense of the water and where it comes from. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have anyone other final public comment? Okay. With that, then I want to thank you all for a good evening, and we are adjourned. Thank you.